Let us dive in.
I
My name's
thought that
Adam
was
Parker.
me, Adam.
Next, we'll be
All right.
sharing data-driven recruitment decisions and introspective look at resources with Sarah McGinnis at the mothership, New Haven and Technolutions. Before we get started, I do want to share a few quick reminders. Since y'all can hear me now, the session is recorded and will be distributed after. Additionally, I encourage you to be social. Obviously, everybody found the chat session to make me aware that you're not able to hear me. But any Q&A, feel free to put that in, and we'll make sure to answer all those questions throughout and at the end, time permitting. Obviously, we have limited time here, so if you have any questions that arise after the session, please reach out to us at marketing@carnegiehighered.com or tag Carnegie HQ on social. With that, I'm excited to pass this session over to Sarah to dive into the data.
Excellent. Thank you, Adam. I appreciate that intro. All right, let's get this first slide up here. All right. Welcome, everyone. As Adam said, my name is Sarah McGinnis, and thank you for joining me today. I am the general manager of Site.org at Technolutions. Following Ken Higgins, who I believe also mentioned it was his birthday today, so I will also say happy birthday, Mr. Ken Higgins, and thank you for leading the way of today's Technolutions presentations. So just a little bit about myself for those of you who this might be your first time hearing from me. I've been in the higher ed landscape for about almost 15 years. Started off as an admissions counselor on the road about 12 weeks out of the year, recruiting students. From there, I became associate director. I did undergrad and graduate admissions. It was a lot. It was stressful. As all you know, I worked at a small Catholic all-women's school in Connecticut. And from there, I became the enrollment operations manager at a community college in Massachusetts, where I got my hand in implementing a CRM for them, which was a very interesting time, getting to see what it's like behind the scenes of getting that whole process implemented. And from there, here I am. I've been at Slate at Technolutions for about 5 years, kind of doing different roles here and there, but overall, in the right now, I should say I'm in the world of Slate.org, which, for those of you who don't know, it's a free platform for high school counselors and students to manage the application process. So counselors can track their students, where they're going, and upload materials and such. So that was just a quick about me and how I got to where I am and why I am talking about the things that I am talking about, recruitment and access and equity for students going into higher ed is and will forever be a passion of mine. So I'm happy that I was able to find this niche area within Technolutions that I can continue to drive that force. So today we're going to be talking about kind of going off of what Ken has talked about, and for those of you who might have been at the Carnegie presentation yesterday by Scott, called Searching Differently. We're talking about data. We're talking about data within recruitment, and I'm specifically going to talk about looking inward at what we already have on our campuses for that recruitment and the data that we already have. So quick agenda, let's just take a quick look. Today we're going to talk about data we already have, like I just said. I'll do a quick introduction of why I am talking about this. I'm going to look at some external factors that are changing the way that we need to be recruiting, and just the importance of using data for recruitment of that, for that end goal of retaining students. Or maybe it's not the end goal of retaining students. Maybe it's the beginning goal is when you're recruiting that you want to be retaining these students throughout their whole time at your institution. And then just lastly, we're going to take a look at some of those resources and talk about what they are and how we collect them. Again, I know Ken had talked about this a little bit in his previous presentation. If y'all didn't get a chance to see that, I'm pretty sure they're all recorded, and you can go ahead back and take a look at that when you get a chance. Obviously, after this one is over, because you're going to want to stay and listen to this. So what are we talking about? We're talking about data that's on your campus, right on your fingertips, whether it's through your CRM, your SIS, your institutional research department. I'm going to talk about some other areas that we can use to kind of get creative in getting some of this data. And why is this data necessary for recruitment? Like I said before, our goal here, and it's been kind of threaded throughout a few of these conversations so far that I've heard this week, is that our goal here is to recruit so we can retain. And if it's done correctly, then the consumer, which is the student, becomes the product, which is the graduate. And with the decline in high school graduates, and it's more important than ever that each student is retained and graduates, which just is going to be leading to better and stronger workforce for us all. But the biggest question again is, how do we do that? What factors are we working against? And what do we do to overcome some of these factors? For a long time, it was known that if you had the means to do so, you could go, you could spend a lot of money, buy some students' names, blanket market to all those students, and get some return on investment. However, that process is changing, and everything I'm going to talk about, nothing's going to be new or rocket science, but sometimes it's good to kind of be reminded of these things. So while it's still important that we receive these prospective students into our CRM in many different ways, we must be thinking more about what could be more cost effective and better for recruiting the students. So again, this means looking at resources we already have. Sometimes we forget what those are and what's right in front of us. Maybe at one point we were using some of these tactics, and now we've kind of looked at, well, what else is there? But maybe we need to go back. So as I mentioned, some of what we're going to talk about today, you may have heard yesterday in a session called, it was titled Search Differently, Adapting to Landscape Changes in Student Search. So my hope is to echo some of what Scott talked about yesterday while giving a few more ideas and thoughts on how this all can be successful. In the webinar yesterday, Scott mentioned some of Carnegie's philosophies, which we should all align with these days. They're all very strong philosophies, and I agree wholeheartedly, but a few of those were that yield is everything, students are in control, and authenticity and personalization is key, and we must recruit to retain. Again, if you haven't had a chance to see that, or if you didn't catch it last night, I think it was the 4 o'clock Eastern, go take a look at that webinar. It was really, really great and had some really great points. One point I wanted to bring attention to, and what most of today is what we're going to be talking about today, is you have to get this data. You have to get this data, and Scott talked yesterday about the data coming from inside your own house, and I think one of his slides said, within your Slate instance. Now, yes, I love that he was, we were talking about a Slate instance, and of course I'm a little biased, but I know that not everyone in the world is going to be using Slate, and that it's not used across campuses, but any CRM or any way that the information is collected can be helpful. It doesn't matter really where you get this information. It's just hopefully whatever you're using can provide it. All right, anyways, let's dig in a little bit. So again, none of this is going to be anything new that you've heard. The changing landscape of student search for higher education is a multifaceted phenomenon. It's being driven by technology, economic factors, demographic shifts, and evolving student priorities. So some of these points that I've mentioned here are just a few ways that student search is being forced to change. So there's still a lot of money being made by institutions, sometimes with or without student consent. We don't have to talk about that too much, but where their names and their data are being purchased or licensed for a fee. And with what we've deemed the student search cliff approaching, we need to figure out how to recruit from a smaller population with more intent. To say that we can blanket again those 30,000 students' names in hopes to have 5 maybe actually convert to a student is the way of the past at this point. Every student that is marketed to, we need to know who they are and if they're interested in what we have to offer at our institution. We also need to be able to describe what it is we are offering. So let's talk about some of these things here. Let's just quickly go into some of these changing landscapes. So obviously with test optional schools, that means fewer test takers, which means less students can be bought. That's just a given. That's nothing new. We all know that. Data privacy regulations is becoming a big thing. When we're talking to colleges and high schools about slate.org and the sharing of data, that's kind of the number one thing everyone's been asking is, what can you tell us about the privacy of the students' information and how is it being shared? Our answer is always if you know Slate and how we protect our information, then slate.org is no different. But it's definitely on the top of everyone's mind when it comes to sharing student information, which is great. I actually think that's fantastic that we're to the point where we're saying, hey, time out. We need to ask more questions about this. But it is, creating more difficulty for being able to get names of students and get real intentional students. Some of that negative public perception about monetizing student information is legitimate, and we need to listen to it, and we need to figure out how to pivot. And I know that Slate and some other Carnegie and some other companies are working on that, where we're putting the students and even their parents kind of more in charge of who can recruit them and how. Students and parents are more internet savvy and smart nowadays as well, especially with data privacy. So they know what it means to put their information out there for all to see, and so they're finding the ways to get the student information is obviously becoming minimal because of that. So what are we doing to gain back the trust of students and parents during the admissions process in higher education? That's a big question, and I think it's not necessarily to answer today. When I was putting this presentation together, I was like, well, we could do a whole another webinar about gaining the trust back from students and parents when this comes to the recruitment and admissions and higher education, because there has been a lot of negative talks within the media and public, and just of course that same old thing we've been seeing, and maybe that the things are going to change, but of course the fact that there are fewer high school graduates than there ever were before. So all right, so now what? I was putting this together and thinking, what are some of the questions that we need to ask ourselves as higher ed administrators and recruiters, and what should we be asking, and how are we answering these questions? So some of the questions I was thinking about is, what do we know? So, and do we know what type of student succeeds at our school? So you're going to see that some of this kind of overlaps with like what I said, Ken's presentation. So, do we have the information to say what students look like that succeed at our schools? Are we sharing the right information with the students during the recruitment process, right? So, is it that we're just blanket sharing information that may be not relevant to everyone? What is the right information, and how do we find it? And lastly, can we solve for some of these external factors? I wish I could say that by the end of my slides, I have solved all of these problems for us. That's not reality, but we can certainly try to start to unpack a little bit of what this all means. So first, we're just going to talk about the power of data and how it pertains to approaching recruitment in a different way. So what are these strategies? What does this look like? And who can help get this information? So what is it that we can know about a student, and if they were successful at our institution? So we're talking about students that are currently on your campus, succeeding or not, and what has been done for the students who aren't succeeding, how have they changed. So this information is going to come from a few different sources on your own campus. Now, I've started to list out some of these areas that it could come from, but all campuses are different. So there might be different areas that actually house more and better information. So use the departments you have to find the information you need. So talk to student retention and success. Talk to the academic departments. I know, it might be a difficult thing to say, but like, faculty have a lot of information about the type of student that succeeds on their campus. And I know that we're using that information more and more, whether it's like pulling teeth or not, it's very important information, and faculty should absolutely be at the table, right away. And even in your institutional research, like, I think it's time that we go back to saying, like, okay, institutional research, you need to have a seat in the admissions office, because we need to be talking every day about what you're finding and how things are changing and how students are doing on our campus. So let's go back to the top. So first, we need to know the basics about the student when they arrive on campus, right? this seems simple, right? We know their GPA, we know their test scores, we know their high school courses, distance from home, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on and on and on. Hopefully, this is all being gathered and stored within the first stages of recruiting a student in a CRM or whatever it is that each campus is using. And this starts to begin to tell the story of what makes a student successful. So we gather this information and then we move on and we say, okay, so we know that for the students that came in, here's what they look like. Now we need to turn and look at academic departments. We need to look at faculty. We need to gather information to know what kind of students are succeeding in their majors. Does it match up with what the student looked like when they first walked through the doors of your institution, or that first time they sat in the seat of a course or class? So we need to get faculty involved, like I said, in the process earlier, and when a student is, even before when a student is an applicant. I go back to my old days of admissions and recruiting, and I remember that we would have students apply, and after they applied, and even maybe after they were accepted, we would have faculty give them a call and say, congratulations, I'm the dean of this major, and I teach these courses, and let's talk. But I think even more so nowadays with what, the confusion there is with why a student is going to certain colleges and whatnot. I think it's important to even start earlier than that. And I don't know what that looks like. And of course, it's going to be different on each school, on each campus. But I think it's time that we look at before that process even starts. And then we take that information. We know now what the student looked like at the time they started, what they look like during their time there. Maybe it's through student success, maybe it's through faculty in the academic departments. And then we need to follow that student throughout their career at the institution and beyond. So Ken started talking about the advancement information that can be gathered, and hopefully you all have some sort of alumni data at your institutions that you can pull from. But it's important to know, where did they go? Where did they end up working? And use your alumni relations to determine this. Sometimes it's difficult, and we're all, most of us are probably alums, hopefully of institutions. And, it's difficult. Sometimes, I ignored my alumni relations office at my alma mater for a very long time. I'd be the first to admit. I was like, I don't know why I need to give you all this information. Why do you care where I am or what I'm doing or whatever? But I think if you spin it in the sense of, we want to know your successes so that the next generation coming up can also see themselves in those successes, and know that the education they're getting at your alma mater, where you went, where the school you love, they also have that opportunity as well. So I think spinning that as well, with the alums and those folks who have moved on and are successful, is also very important. It's the messaging to them as to why it's important and getting their buy-in for helping with the recruitment process. And then you kind of just take all of this internal information that you have and create a data bank with it. I was joking with some of my colleagues that this sounds very data scientist-y, which I'm not sure that's a word, but it is now. And so not everyone's going to be, a data nerd who wants to sit with all of this and look at it. But I think it's important that there's at least a few folks on every campus or in each admissions office that does have a passion for looking at this information now, because it's only going to help for future communications that we're providing to students when it comes to recruitment. Great. So, okay, so we now are talking about, let me go back real quick. So we're now talking about the power of data and, the approach to enhancing messaging using this data, right? So let's just take a look now at just some of the ideas and some of the things that, we talk about within our department of Slate.org and in Technolutions. So when we're marketing to the data, what I mean by that is, I guess it's simply put, it's telling stories. Storytelling is still the most common way to engage with others, period. It could be at a party, it could be, recruiting students. It's storytelling engages other folks. It gets them sucked in. They want to hear the story. They want to hear the end, the whole tale. So, whether it's within sales, marketing, interviewing, gaining buy-in for something, humans relate to stories. Being able to use data from the second the student starts at your school all the way through how they're doing in their career will speak wonders to the students. they'll see themselves in the story. The message must feel authentic and the student must relate to it. And I think those are two of the biggest points that we need to continue to remember. I know it sounds easy on paper. I can say it out loud. I can say we must stay authentic. Scott mentioned it yesterday. That's one of the main things is authenticity. It's easy to say, and I think it's definitely harder to do. But if we keep that in the back of our minds whenever we're writing up emails or posting things on social media, students can see through it. They're so used to marketing and getting things fed to them that they know when something is authentic and real and be able to see themselves in it and when they're not. So I think that, turning internal and say, is this what a student, when they see this, is this what they're actually going to want to be part of, is something important to think about. And so you're probably saying yourself, yep. So duh, Sarah, tell us something we don't know. I'm not really sure I can tell you something you don't know, but like I said, this is just me telling you to remember all of this and that it's important. So, my goal overall with some of this is that I want people to start sharing their ideas and successes on their campuses. So if you'd like to use the chat to share some of these interesting pieces of data as I continue on with the session, please do so. I'd be curious just to hear, is there something that you found by digging in other departments on your campus that hit really hard in some of your marketing and recruitment? What was it? What did you do with it? Was it successful? I wish this was more of like a roundtable discussion that we were having today, that we could all just start sharing and kind of back and forth off of each other's ideas. But it's not. So we're going to have to work with what we have here. So feel free to use the chat if you want to. There's no pressure. I know you're probably also saying like, hey, Sarah, why would we want to tell everyone else how to recruit well? Well, Technolutions, our theory is we're all kind of in this together. And I think that the end goal, even if we are competitors in the landscape, like the end goal is to just start making this about the betterment of the student and their overall experience in recruitment. So hopefully everyone can start to see that a little bit. So then the next 2 points after the campaigns that tell a story that I have on the screen, my next 2 points on the slide, just making sure that you're portraying your institution, whether it's in a college profile, and there's millions of different websites that you can put your college profiles on, whether it's in newsletters or any of the kind of marketing that students get, just making sure that the students' success and retention is in mind when you are writing these profiles and showing what your school is about. We can all talk about schools being, in a beautiful location with clean facilities and this, that, and the other thing, but sure, we all can say that. And what the student wants to know is, what does that mean for them, and what more can they get out of being on your campus, right? So that's it's a challenge to try to figure out how to put your profiles and how to market your colleges in a way that students can actually like see something different from the college down the street. And another thing that I have here is just setting the expectations of what it takes to be successful on your campus. So this doesn't mean straight A's all the time. This doesn't mean that you have to be in 42 clubs in order to be successful. It's genuine. What does it take to be successful? So this could mean, like I said earlier, a student who is interested in let's say a culinary program. So they go to their culinary classes every day, but what else makes it successful? Oh, maybe that they're actually working at the cafe on campus, or volunteering at the soup kitchen. I don't know, there's many ways that the students can get involved that doesn't have to do with their day-to-day coursework. So just a quick story talking about expectations. When I was at NACAC last month, and hopefully many of you were there as well, I went to the talk with the governor of Maryland, and Angel Perez and Miguel Cardona. And I was listening to the governor of Maryland, and his name's Westmore, and he was talking a little bit about a book he wrote, and it's titled The Other Westmore. And the overall, purpose of the book was to examine how people with similar backgrounds end up living very different lives. But there was one thing here that I think kind of weaves in well with what we are talking about, and that's the idea of setting expectations for students that are applying to your school right out of the gate. So here's what is expected to succeed, right? Something that just needs to be laid out. So Governor Moore's entire theory is that a student or person, he was talking more generally, but we can talk about students here. A student lives up to their expectations, right? So if someone is telling them they can succeed and shows them an example of how, then they're going to live up to that and in turn actually succeed. But if we don't give them those examples, they might not see the positive expectations and in turn might not live up to those. So anyways, if you get a chance and you want to check out his book, I highly recommend it. Okay, so that was my quick little story. Let's now talk about how this data can now empower the student. And I think no matter how you look at this presentation, my overall goal is that we're trying to empower the students more and more into making the decisions on their own and getting more involved themselves in the whole recruitment process. Students want to be in control of who's recruiting them. Some may not know that that's what they want because it seems a lot easier maybe if schools just come to them. But for the most part, I think most students would say they want to be in control of the recruiting process. And there are many websites now and different platforms that students can go to that are empowering them to choose who they want to interact with and who they want to receive information from. Shameless plug here. If anyone had paid attention at NACAC, we just launched, myself and Technolutions just launched a new organization called start.edu. It's also a platform online where students can go and they can start their college search process. It's free of advertising, completely free for the students and colleges, and students can search for their college, add it to their favorites, and eventually in the next iteration of this, because it's still kind of in the beginning phases, they'll be able to share their information with their counselors back and forth at their high schools, and then raise their hand and share their information with the colleges themselves as well. And that's all. That's just not colleges that are Slate partners. It will be open for any college at all. I know that I'm going to talk a minute about College Express, which I guess I'm a little bit biased because I'm talking about Technolutions and Carnegie products, but they have a lot in similarity when it comes to allowing for the student to be the ones raising their hand and getting involved in the recruitment process instead of getting 30 different emails from colleges that they may match one or two criteria on and getting shoved a lot of information. Let's see. So I'm going to just give you a quick demonstration, a quick look at the start.edu and College Express. But I think overall, let's just continue to push students to use sites like this where they're in control of the admissions process. The more they're going to these sites, the more it's going to benefit you as the enrollment, folks at your schools. And again, like I said, while more students are educated on the privacy of the internet and what that all means, they still don't understand what's going on in the background of admission. So allowing them to be more in control, I think, will overall help their field when they come to your campus and start to do the recruitment process with you. So just really quick, I just wanted to give a few examples. This is start.edu, so students can come here and search. Shortly, we're going to have a new interface here for the profile itself. We are also going to allow colleges to go in and update their information of their own information on the profiles. Another cool feature that platforms like start.edu and some of the other ones are, we're kind of giving recommendations. Everyone's using AI generated information these days. So we're giving information based on some of the, actually not some, but a lot of data that we sit on here at Technolutions. So none of it is personally identifiable information about students. It's all just in general. But, we know if a student is applying to Loyola, Maryland, we also know where else they've applied. And so that helps other students see that there might be other places they should be looking at. So, we're kind of hoping that things like this and will take off and other people will start to use these ideas of like, students can see one location they should apply to, and then maybe get some recommendations for a few other places that maybe is a gem that they would never have looked at, but it would be a great fit for them. So let's see. And, again, these students that will be raising their hands through websites like start.edu and College Express, they're going to be hotter inquiries and prospects. Let's be honest. If they're looking to you and they've raised their hand at you, they're going to be the ones that you want to actually focus on. So this is just a College Express landing page for colleges. When you search, for those who haven't seen it, hopefully you all have, because you're here listening to Carnegie Today. But it's just really great resources. And yes, both sites do a lot of the same things with searching in colleges. They also have their own information. College Express does a wonderful job with putting out articles and blog posts and stuff like that to help students during their search. Start.edu is connecting this information that the students start to curate with their high school counselors. So I know there's a lot of different places out there students can be looking, but they all kind of do their own little thing, and they might all work differently for students at different points of time during their search process. So with that, it was a lot of information. Again, I get that a lot of this isn't new. It's not rocket science, but sometimes we just need to be reminded of what it is that we should be looking at. We can get caught up in listening to these big plans that other schools are doing, and we need to spend all this money on all of this. But sometimes we just need to take a step back and realize what it is we already have and how we can use it, and just continue to promote this to the students and have access available to them to get to the school that they want to get to. And that is all I have today. So I think Adam's going to pop back in and we can see if anybody has any questions in the chat. Happy to chat in today. Happy to have you email me at any point if you have questions or ideas or how these search sites can be better for colleges and high school students. Always welcome to any of that information and feedback.
Sarah, that was great. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to put those into the Q&A or the chat. Yeah, Sarah, appreciated that. Appreciated you talking us through all the data, as well as talking about some new features, as well as highlighting College Express, which is always great to see, making my job easy.
That's it. That's right. I mean, we're all in this together. That's how I see it. So, any promotion across the board is great. All right.
Definitely. I don't see any Q&A coming through, but if people do have questions for Sarah, feel free to pass those along after the session. We'll make sure to connect you with her. Definitely a great resource at Technolutions there. With that, I guess, Sarah, is there any parting words before we kind of depart today?
No, good luck and keep doing the work of, I don't know, angels. I know it's hard. I know this is hard, and I know that getting in front of students and making sure that it's the right fit for them is difficult, and we all have hard roles. So thank you everyone for doing what you do.
Appreciate those sentiments and appreciate you being with us today. So next up on the Connection Conference, we will actually be connecting with Kate Ledger of ODU Global as she assesses marketing essentials directly after this at 1 p.m. Eastern. So appreciate everybody participating in this late portion of the conference. Feel free to enjoy a break, grab lunch. Look forward to seeing you in the future sessions today. So appreciate it.
Very good.